in the first place. So I gave you guys the top 5 reasons: life safety protection, public health and welfare, structural integrity and safety, property protection and zoning compliance, and code compliance and quality assurance. So then we have what things Camden Hills currently does require permits for, and there's a short list. I'll just read through those. Temporary storage structures such as plastic or resin products, retaining walls not over 4 feet, painting, wallpapering, tiling, flooring, carpeting, cabinets, countertops, similar finish work, swimming pools less than 24 inches deep, swings and other playground equipment, window awnings supported by the exterior wall, and then ordinary repairs that do not involve structural modifications, alterations to egress systems, or changes in the plumbing, electrical, gas, and mechanical systems, and then regular maintenance of the structure or equipment do not require permits. So then I put together a list of some of the projects that we talked about, maybe requiring permits or not. And so I put together like a pro and con of permits versus no permits. And so basically, the pros of no permits: projects could be started faster without review time and waiting for inspections. It would make the work less expensive for residents and businesses because they're not paying for those services now. It would alleviate administrative work on your end because now you're not processing those permits. It could encourage property improvements. You know, people think they don't have to get permits and they might be more willing to work on their property. And then make Camden Hills a more permit-friendly town was kind of how I put it. So those are the pros of no permits. So some of that stuff sounds pretty good, but you know, once you start looking at, by not requiring permits, you could get into substandard work that could create fire hazards, structural problems, electrical dangers. Insurance companies may deny claims for unpermitted work. Future buyers may not be, maybe, you know, a little skeptical of work that wasn't done with permits and inspections. It's a revenue loss for Camden Hills. Improvements may not be counted towards tax assessment values. No protection for the owner for quality or safety compliance. If something is found to be wrong, then it's going to be costly and timely for people to fix those things. And I put for the village attorney, you could consult with them to see if they have any more thoughts on, you know, why not requiring a permit may not be wise for Camden Hills. So I'll spare going through each and every type of permit unless there's a specific one that you had any questions on. No questions on that? Okay. So then we looked at the surrounding communities and found that every community requires permits for most of the things that were brought up. Some of them didn't adopt their codes properly and accidentally exempted them from requiring permits, but then they put it in their fee schedule, so they do actually require permits for it, which is one of the things that we're cleaning up in Camden Hills new code amendments, is to make sure that it's clear what things do and don't require permits. So if you were to eliminate permits for some of those work types that we identified, Camden Hills would be one of the only villages that doesn't do permits for that kind of stuff. And I don't know if that's something that's good or bad. That's for you guys to decide. I'm just trying to present you the information. You know, obviously, I come from life safety background, architecture, code enforcement, all of that stuff. So, of course, it's my bread and butter. It's what I do for a living. But, you know, it doesn't affect our company. It doesn't affect, you know, anything like that. So whether or not you want to require permits for certain things, it's totally up to you guys. I obviously am a proponent for requiring permits and inspections just because I've heard so many horror stories. I mean, some of those would bring you to tears that you hear about substandard things or something that caused somebody to get hurt or die in a situation. And so it's very serious stuff. Maybe fences outside of the house aren't as big of a deal, and you know, we can talk about that. But some of the things when it comes to, you know, windows, furnaces, water heaters, that kind of stuff is, you know, the cost is relatively low for the benefit, in my opinion. And it does take a little bit of time to process those permits, but there are ways to process them faster and more efficiently. So, with that being said, as far as, you know, permit types, requirements are required, what surrounding communities do, does anybody have any thoughts, questions? Would you guys like to talk about it?
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
I think this would be the place, I think, Nick, for the list that you looked at, you had something that you wanted to question whether we should continue to have permits or to reduce.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that in the next agenda item, but I can bring them up now.
Yeah, I think these two agenda items
Go together.
they just blend in together, so we might as well, while we still have Seth at the microphone, just go ahead and get that list to the next agenda item.
Okay, well then, let me...
Because if we're going to take any action, we'll be recommending to have a code amendment not to include on the fee schedule or a code amendment that say...
Sure. So what I'll do is, I was planning on going through the list of proposed amendments, which aren't necessarily amendments, you know, based on what Seth you created. A lot of these are really taking our policy and making it more concise, taking out the discretion, and really letting them look at this document and they know, yes, I need a permit, no, I do not need a permit. So I'm going to, if we go to what is this called? Village of Camden Hills Comprehensive Permit Matrix Amendments. I'm going to scroll through until there is an edit. And driveways. Oh, I'm sorry, before that, decks. So on decks, if the deck already exists, you're doing any sort of maintenance, replacing boards, whatever that maintenance may be, putting the language in the permit matrix that a permit is not required for that. The deck exists, you're simply doing whatever maintenance is required on the deck. Pause for any feedback. I'll move on to the next one. Driveways, overlays or resurfacing. So the driveway already exists. You are resurfacing, you're putting an overlay on. You know, with the driveways, I think the concern is that if someone comes in and they resurface their driveway, that they make it larger. Which ends up being a really big issue east of here when they're concerned about stormwater volume and runoff, right? They're concerned about impervious area on a lot. Out here, if someone did do that, one, you know, the option would be is if it was noticed, it went into, you know, an area it wasn't supposed to, you can complain about that. The village is notified, we send someone out there, say, no, you needed a permit for that. You made your driveway bigger. This does not say you can make your driveway bigger. If you're replacing it and you're resurfacing it, then there's no permit required. If you do anything new throughout this, a permit's required. Pause for discussion.
The note that you have in there about Township Highway,
Yeah.
how do we still capture to make sure that they know to go and inspect? I mean, it doesn't have to be a permit, but maybe there's some like advisory application process?
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, we would come up with a notification. We just need to be notified that you're going to be resurfacing your driveway, so we can let the highway department know. That would be
If there's a culvert.
if there is a culvert. Yep. And I think
About
that's
9 out of 10 people, if they do work on their driveway and it involves the culvert area, Sam's guys are driving around enough that they catch 9 out of 10 times, and then they tell us, and then we we go out and inspect. Or they just tell the person right on the spot with one of their workers that you need a permit to touch the culvert. But most folks, if they're replacing the culvert, they want to go to the highway department, to be fair, because they know they paid for the first one, and the second one, they get the culvert dropped off for nothing from the highway department. So most of the time, folks are getting notified the highway, because if it's involved in that culvert being changed out, they want that $700 kind of piece of pipe to be delivered. So I think it's just a good note to have, and we should notify them, but we don't really have too much of a problem on this issue, because folks do go to Sam and say, hey, I paid for this, I want the next one, like you promised me 20 years ago, free.
Very good. So let's see, demolition, residential, non-structural, and non-mechanical. So what would that be? Any renovation you're doing in your home, you're taking out flooring, you're taking out drywall, cabinetry. Again, this is really just being concise, taking out the discretion. So non-mechanical, non-structural, residential, demolition. There's pause. Let's see, so other structures, shed. The permit's still required, but in this, currently, we refer to sheds and other structures throughout the permit matrix at 200 square feet. Based on really what sheds are, looking at even at the Home Depot, these tough sheds, I mean, 300 square feet seems like a much more reasonable number for us to be using for these small buildings. So I have changed in this document also, 200 increased it to 300 square feet throughout.
And Nick, at that point, do we want to put something to say, located, when you locate that said shed, it still needs to be 15 feet from your property line, so you don't encroach on your neighbor. It's in the zoning ordinance, but just do it just so that somebody goes, hey, it said I didn't have to have a permit, and then we get a neighbor that says, so you're just relying on the zoning code. If the neighbor complains, we'll tell them to move the shed 2 feet or 5 feet if necessary. Because the zoning code is already there, but I don't think everybody checks the zoning code, is what my point is, folks.
What if they're using a concrete pad, you can't move it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like simplifying things always keeps it easier, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also the transparency of getting the information in front of everybody. I think the more we add to this, the more it kind of muddies the waters. I think having the zoning code that it exists, you know, I mean,
Or we could just put something at the top of the permit, check zoning before you execute.
yeah.
Well, to that end, go a little further and then say that the permit is only required if it's not encroaching, be generic on that, because then if they know they encroach, I think that gives a little extra common adjudication time to say, hey, you read that you didn't need a permit, but you couldn't encroach, you did it, so take your shut down. Or move it.
We'll let the lawyer get that legal out.
Let's see, fences, picket panel post replacement, it already exists. You know, the concern here is just like the driveways, potentially someone is replacing their fence and they increase it by a foot, 3 feet, 10 feet on all sides. If that were to happen, someone noticed, someone called in, at some point they get their land surveyed, the village say you needed a permit for that, you need to put your fence back to the original position. But this would only cover existing fences, existing posts, existing pickets. As we scroll through, we find the next one. Remodel, build out residential, interior, remodel, no structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, so mechanical meaning like HVAC, changes or additions. So a good example could be renovating your basement, your bathroom, your kitchen, your family room. You're not adding or taking away electrical or lighting, you're not adding new gas pipes, your plumbing staying where it is. It's really just being concise because, as fire safety pointed out, this is already not something that would require a permit, but this is just being more concise, taking the discretion out of it, putting it in writing in the document.
Can you just, does this turn off?
Go ahead.
Maybe.
Time's up.
It's on.
I think it turns off automatic or something. There we go. Nick, could you give like that one seems like a big one to me, so I don't want to gloss over it. Interior remodel, is that cosmetic only? Like, because we all know that people stretch what they're doing. Like, hey, I'm only, building this one wall, or I'm only, moving the cabinet over this way, but then there's a bunch of extra stuff that they're doing as part of it. So maybe you can give some more examples on what an interior remodel is to you.
So I'm going to refer to the document rather than muddy the waters. So it would be anything inside your home that does not have any structural changes to the home. It does not have any mechanical, electrical, or plumbing changes or additions. So whatever that project may be, if those criteria applied, then no permit would be required.
Okay.
But if they add a new wall and add electrical,
If they added electrical, then a permit would be required. So if they added a wall, and now in that wall you need to have 4 outlets, that would need to be inspected.
Yeah, so the wall itself, you're saying, wouldn't require a permit, because that's not
Potentially
structural.
it would, because a wall, what do you need, an outlet every 6 feet?
It depends where it's at and what it's for. But, so how are people supposed to know if they need electrical in that wall?
Well, they're gonna hire a contractor, right?
Yes, they do, yeah.
And I think what Dick is saying is if you're just replacing, like you're putting in a new sink, you're putting in new cabinets, you're putting in new countertops, and all you're doing is replacing what's already there, that you don't need anything. But if you're moving the sink from the wall to an island, or if you're putting additional electricity into an island, then you would need it. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
So if it's just replacement, you're going in, you're yanking out your kitchen, and you're putting everything back exactly where it was, and you're not adding anything else to make the same.
Yeah, that I agree with. But when you say remodel, that I'm just trying to clarify just so I understand, because again, I give the wall example. If I build a new wall, does that require a permit?
Is it structural?
It's not load bearing.
Then it wouldn't need a permit.
Okay. So you could theoretically build a wall that stops somebody from getting out of the house quicker or does some other effect in the house. It just seems like people will stretch that out to, well, it's not like you could build out your basement with all walls and it could be non-structural. You could put 4 bedrooms down there with just walls and doors. And they wouldn't put smoke detectors, they wouldn't put electricity, they wouldn't do anything, but they didn't need a permit because it's non-structural. That's my fear of non-structural or MEP. So as long as I don't do that, I can build away. It seems troublesome, but that's why I'm here, is to point out these things.
I think like that example though that you're giving of completely changing the basement and building out 4 bedrooms, that's not what this says. This doesn't say that, you can add 4 bedrooms down in the basement with no electrical. I mean, we still have a building code that applies. This doesn't say that we're taking away the building code, that it no longer applies. We're strictly saying that if you do this work under these conditions, so that would no longer apply. If you were to build a base, we're not saying that you are exempt from the International Building Code. We're not saying that. Same thing with the fence or the driveway. If someone were to do work in their home, change the fence, and then we found out later that the fence had expanded 10 feet, that was not okay.
Yeah, it's just, getting inside of somebody's house is never gonna happen. You're never gonna get inside somebody's house. There's too many legal protections to know what somebody's doing, and I'm not trying to be combative, please. I just know what people stretch. So it says non-structural, no MEP. Again, I can build unlimited walls that are non-structural.
No, you can't, because you're gonna violate the rest of the building codes.
But how would we find
It
out?
doesn't matter, those walls have to be outlet.
Janice, Seth is giving us a presentation.
I will be silent then, if you guys want to continue. I'll chime in later.
Well, to the point, I mean, if it's structural, okay, the feedback from the lavalier? No, there you go. Oh, okay, there you go. For the clearly when you say structural, we're talking about load bearing, people use that term, or there's other things that they could be structural for. If you're talking about a partition wall, that's what you're talking about, a partition wall, right? It's non-load bearing, non-structural, but to your point, if it blocks egress, what is for a normal, let's say somebody came in for an addition or a remodel that they want to go through, and they were to propose a wall that would be blocking egress, what would you say to them? Change your plan because it doesn't meet this, right?
Yes.
And then at final, we need to make sure, right, Rob, we make sure that they
Put it in the right spot.
right spot. I don't know, that's just, I'm gonna have to think about that one a little bit, because, I gotta go home and talk to somebody.
Well, I think Nick, you've got a lot more trust that everybody's gonna be as honest as you are. And Seth comes from the world of mistrust. And so legally, so does Carmen and I, so.
Life safety.
Life safety,
Not mistrust.
the fire marshal said something today too, saying, hey, we trust, but we trust because we go verify, and they want to inspect. So if we don't require the permit, there's no inspection, so that's where there's going to be the rub, Nick, is that I agree with the no permit, but how do we check that they followed what you described?
So I guess my question would be, we do have remodel and build outs require a permit. They have structural or MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing relocations. So, I mean, we have them pretty clearly defined here. Right now, in our town, I ran the data, it's now about a year and a half old. But roughly 10 to 15% of projects actually have a permit secured in our village to begin with. If we put everything on a 20-year life cycle, driveways, roofs, windows, interior renovations, water heaters, furnaces, then we would assume 5% of all of those items would be replaced every year, and that's being really generous. It's probably more of like a 15-year life cycle. That's saying that I did the work when my daughter was born, and I don't do any other work until she's a sophomore in college. That's just not going to happen. It ends up being 10 to 15%. So really, what we're doing is we're just making more rational amendments to this code. We're still saying that if you are doing these modifications, you need a permit. But if you're not, you don't. How else do you do it? Because even in your document, you stated in what doesn't require a permit, it's almost the same thing. You said ordinary repairs that do not involve structural modifications, alterations to egress system, changes to plumbing, electrical, gas, mechanical, systems affecting public health and safety. maintenance of the structure or equipment. So you take out an old kitchen, you put in a new kitchen, the kitchen sink stays in the same place, all the outlets stay in the same place. Where's the conflict? I mean, it's easy to throw in, like, well, what ifs? Well, the fact is, 85% of people don't secure a permit to begin with.
Well,
Yeah, and this ultimately comes down to is a policy call. You set the policy, it's 7 of you, and because this community does not have a plethora of rentals, I'm not as concerned as I would be in 99% of the 250 municipalities in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking the same thing. The areas we're talking about and the values of the homes out here, I don't think anybody's going to just put up what Seth described. If you're gonna put 4 bedrooms in your basement, they're gonna have electricity, they're gonna have all sorts of different things. I agree with you. It's not like we're a bunch of rentals where they're just gonna jury rig something to make it look nice. So.
Yeah, I think you should also look at the fire marshal. The fire marshal's report I thought was going to be very clean, and we don't have a problem with the changes, but then you look at the detail, the fire marshal wants in and look at everything. So, Mike, I guess that would be the catch-all, is the fire marshal has the authority, they just, how they get to know it, go look. Yeah.
And then the next one, just to keep moving, is under HVAC, water heater replacement, same BTU, gallon, and vent. Self-certifying 120-degree water temperature. And, I can proactively just give a little bit of data on this, because the concerns are carbon monoxide poisoning in the home, which, of course, our top priority is safety, health and safety, number one. I grabbed just a couple statistics because that gets thrown around so frequently. So in 2023, there were a little over 9 million water heaters sold. According to the Consumer